Hello YouTube and welcome to an all new Elder Scrolls lore video. Today we're talking about the Orb of Vaermina, a Daedric artifact of the Daedric Prince Vaermina and catalyst in the Great War. This will be quite a short video, so without any further ado, let's get into the lore immediately. So, the Orb of Vaermina is one of the Daedric Prince Vaermina's Daedric artifacts, and it makes an appearance in both the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion and the Elder Scrolls Legends. The orb resembles a crystal ball, emanating a strange aura and a strange sound when it's activated and being used, while having a dull matte glass texture when deactivated. The orb's exact properties never get outright stated, however we do know that it can be used to scry places from a distance. Presumably, one theory is that if one looks inside the orb, one can observe faraway people, events and objects. In that sense, it would work pretty much like a crystal ball, which is probably the reason it has been designed to look like one. But we don't know exactly whether that is how it's used, as we don't really see it used actively. We don't, for example, know whether there's a special ritual required to use it, or whether specific skills or traits are needed. But what we do know is that it can't be effectively used without Vaermina's permission if one manages to somehow steal it away from her followers. And to just get back to that, we don't really know how it's used. We do know that it's also implied in Oblivion, at least, that one likely has to be asleep to use the artifact, although that's just implied, as again we don't exactly know. But it would make sense if this was the case, as Vaermina is the Daedric Prince of, among other things, dreams and nightmares. So perhaps the orb can be used to scry places not by looking inside it, like the first theory states, but rather by projecting faraway events and people inside the dreams of the user of the orb. We don't know that for certain, of course, but I personally lean more towards it being used while you're asleep rather than just straight up looking inside it. Because in Oblivion, we as the player can do the quest for Vaermina, in which the Daedric Prince asks us to retrieve the orb, which has during Oblivion been stolen by the wizard Argvad. Vaermina states that the wizard somehow stole the orb from the dreams of her followers, and we have to deal with Argvad to get the orb back for her. When we find Argvad, he is asleep as he is using the orb, which is why I suspect it's likely that one has to be asleep to use it. Although it's also possible that when he tried to use the orb, Vaermina put him to sleep through the orb, as she said that he's locked in an internal nightmare and found more than he bargained for when he tried to use the orb. So it's a bit unclear how that works, but I personally like the idea of the orb projecting stuff in one's dreams more, because that would fit Vaermina more and it would be more creative than a generic crystal ball. But yeah, it's a bit unclear how it works, and we have some clues for both of the interpretations of having to look inside it or having to be asleep in a dream to get the visions from the ball. Or from the orb. Anyway, due to its scrying function, it has a pretty big potential as an artifact to be used passively. It isn't directly a weapon, but if you know what someone is doing, because you can observe them from anywhere at any distance, that has great value as well, perhaps even greater than just a generic weapon, which is really powerful. And we have seen that play out, because in the Elder Scrolls Legends main campaign, we see that during the Great War between the Thalmor-led Altmeri Dominion and the Cyrodiilic Empire, the Altmeri Dominion used the orb to scry the Imperial army so that the Dominion leadership at all times knew what the Empire was planning. That way they managed to have a relentless advance through Imperial lands in both Hammerfell and Cyrodiil in the very first years of the war, as every time the Empire attempted to retaliate, the Dominion forces knew exactly where to ambush them, making retaliation almost impossible for the Empire. It was only after the player character of the Elder Scrolls Legends, the Forgotten Hero, discovered the orb when infiltrating the Imperial city, that the tide of the war turned on the Dominion, because the Forgotten Hero either made the choice to take the orb for themselves and bring it back to the Imperial forces, or shatter it. In either case, this made it so that the Dominion was suddenly blind, as they were no longer able to spy on the enemy. With the Dominion suddenly in the dark, the Empire was then able to gather its remaining strength and destroy the Dominion forces in central Cyrodiil, giving it a strong position for negotiations, after which the Empire was able to negotiate the White Gold Concordat and negotiate peace. The White Gold Concordat then had the Dominion forces retreat from southern Cyrodiil, giving occupied land back, and having the Dominion pay implied war reparations to the Empire, but the war reparations are only implied and not really directly confirmed. And of course, all the other stuff that we know about, like the abolishment of Talos worship, the blades being, betrayed by the Empire, essentially. Anyway, it's likely that the canon choice will be that the Forgotten Hero destroyed the Orb of Vaermina, as it's likely that the Empire would probably not have sued for peace if it had the Orb of Vaermina and the foresight over the ultimate forces that it would bring. Or perhaps the Empire was not able to use it, as the Dominion were the only ones able to make a pact with the Daedric Prince Vaermina to be able to use the Orb, so anyone in the Empire who would try it would be trapped by the Orb, just like Argvad in Oblivion. Or maybe the Empire did manage to use it, then saw how many forces the Dominion had left and quickly sued for peace while the Dominion was still in the dark. Either way, we don't know. One last tidbit though about the Orb is that something interesting is that the Dominion leadership thought to bring it to the Imperial city during the war. I don't know why. I don't know why they just didn't keep it on, the Somerset Isles. But maybe the Orb has a range, like a max range, which can be used to scry. I actually don't know, but I found that a bit curious. Anyway, that's all I can say about the Orb of Vaermina. A pretty controversial addition to the lore, as not many people enjoyed the fact that it's been added to the lore about the Great War by Elder Scrolls Legends, but it's been added regardless, and so we probably have to live with it. That said, I hope that you learned something today, but before I end this video, allow me to say I hope to see you again in the next Elder Scrolls lore video next week, and allow me to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polaris Putin, Athena Hyodis, King Chris, Scribe of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Sar Mikal, and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to these people and all the other Patreon supporters on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that, I'm very grateful. That said, I hope to see you all in the next Elder Scrolls lore video next week. Bye bye.